The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, golden liquid spreading like a broken promise across my parents' pristine dining room. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of purple, while my mother clutched her pearls so tightly I thought they might snap. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock that had witnessed 3 generations of family dinners, though none quite like this one. Margaret Elizabeth Harrison. My father finally spoke, each word measured and cold as winter frost. You will marry Dexter Montgomery, and that is final. I stood my ground, even as my knees trembled beneath my designer dress, the one my mother had picked out specifically for this dinner. The dinner where they'd ambushed me with their grand plan. 24 years old, successful in my own right as a marketing consultant, and they still thought they could arrange my life like pieces on a chessboard. I won't, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I'm already seeing someone. The words hung in the air like a lit fuse. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest in that dramatic way she'd perfected over years of country club scandals. My father, Richard Harrison, CEO of Harrison Industries and a man who hadn't heard the word no in at least 2 decades, slowly rose from his chair. Seeing someone? He repeated the words as if they were foreign, incomprehensible. And you didn't think to mention this before now? Before they'd invited the Montgomerys over for dinner last week. Before they'd spent the evening discussing merger possibilities between our family's companies. Before Dexter Montgomery, with his perfectly styled hair and Harvard MBA, had smiled at me across the table while our parents planned our future like a hostile takeover. His name is Logan, I said, lifting my chin. Logan Mitchell. We've been together for 8 months. The name dropped into the conversation like a stone into still water, sending ripples of shock across my parents' faces. Mitchell, not a name from their social register, not a family with a summer house in the Hamptons or a box at the opera. Just Logan Mitchell, who worked as a software developer, who made me laugh until my sides hurt, who held me when anxiety about my family's expectations kept me awake at night. 8 months, my mother, Victoria, whispered, sinking into her chair. 8 months of deception. It wasn't deception, Mom. It was privacy. There's a difference. My father's laugh was bitter, sharp. Privacy? In this family? You know better than that, Margaret. Everything we do affects the family name, the business. This Logan, he said the name like it tasted sour. What does his family do? What are his connections? He doesn't have connections, Dad. He has character. He has kindness. He has nothing. My father's fist came down on the table, making the china jump. Nothing that matters in our world. Dexter Montgomery is offering to merge his family's tech empire with ours. Do you understand what that means? The Harrison-Montgomery alliance would create one of the most powerful conglomerates on the East Coast. I understood perfectly. I understood that I was not a daughter to them in this moment, but a business asset. A merger opportunity dressed in Chanel. The realization hit me with such force that I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. I need some air, I managed to say, turning toward the door. Margaret, if you walk out that door, my father's threat hung unfinished, but I didn't stop to hear the rest. The cool October evening wrapped around me as I escaped to the garden, my heels clicking against the stone pathway that wound through my mother's prized rose bushes. My phone buzzed in my purse. Logan. As if he could sense my distress from across the city. How did it go? His text read, followed by a heart emoji that made me smile despite everything. I called him instead of texting back, needing to hear his voice. He answered on the first ring. That bad, huh? He said, and I could hear the concern beneath his attempt at lightness. They want me to marry Dexter Montgomery, I said without preamble. It's all arranged. A business deal disguised as a romance. The silence on the other end stretched for a moment. What did you tell them? The truth. About us. And I sat down on the marble bench my grandmother had imported from Italy, remembering how she used to tell me stories about her own arranged marriage here, how she'd learned to love my grandfather over time, how duty and love could coexist. But that was a different era, wasn't it? They're furious. My father basically called you worthless. Logan's laugh was rueful. Well, compared to the Montgomerys, I suppose I am. I don't have a trust fund or a family company. Just my coding skills and a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Don't, I said firmly. Don't you dare diminish yourself. You're worth 1,000 Dexter Montgomerys. Margaret. His voice was soft now, tender. You know I love you, right? But I won't be the reason you lose your family. You're not the reason. They are. They're choosing their business over their daughter. I heard footsteps on the path and looked up to see my younger sister, Rebecca, approaching with 2 cups of tea. At 21, she was still in college, still somewhat under our parents' radar. She handed me a cup and sat down beside me. I'll call you back, I told Logan. I love you. Love you too. We'll figure this out. Rebecca waited until I'd hung up before speaking. They're in there planning your engagement party. What? The tea sloshed dangerously in my cup. Mom's already calling the country club. Dad's on the phone with Mr. Montgomery. They're talking about a spring wedding. The audacity of it took my breath away. They can, and they are. Rebecca's expression was sympathetic but resigned. You know how they are, Maggie. Once they've decided something, it might as well be carved in stone. I won't do it. Then what will you do? They'll cut you off. No more trust fund payments. No more family dinners. No more prison, I finished for her. Maybe that's exactly what I need. Rebecca's eyes widened. You can't be serious. You'd give up everything for Logan? I'd give up everything for my freedom, I corrected. For the right to choose my own life. The French doors to the house opened, and my mother appeared, silhouetted against the warm light from inside. Margaret, dear, come inside. The Montgomerys are on their way over. We need to discuss the timeline. Timeline for what, exactly? I stood, squaring my shoulders. For your engagement, of course. Dexter is very eager to make this official. Mother, I told you, I'm with someone else. Victoria Harrison's smile was razor sharp, the kind she deployed at charity galas when dealing with women who thought they could challenge her position as head of the hospital board. Yes, this Logan person. Well, that's easily handled. You'll end it tomorrow. No. I beg your pardon? I said no. I will not end my relationship with Logan. I will not marry Dexter Montgomery. And I will not be bullied into submission like some Victorian-era heroine. My mother's composure cracked slightly, a fleeting expression of genuine hurt crossing her face before the mask slipped back into place. Bullied? Is that what you think this is? We're trying to secure your future, Margaret. The Harrison name carries weight, but it also carries responsibility. Responsibility to whom? To you? To Dad's shareholders? To the family legacy, she said, as if that explained everything. Your great-grandfather built this empire from nothing. Your grandfather expanded it. Your father modernized it. And now it's your generation's turn to carry it forward. Rebecca can carry it forward. My sister made a strangled sound beside me. Oh no, leave me out of this. The Montgomerys want you, Margaret. Dexter specifically requested you. Requested me? Like I'm an item on a menu? Before my mother could respond, we heard car doors slamming in the driveway. The Montgomerys had arrived. My mother's eyes turned pleading, a rare display of vulnerability. Please, Margaret, just meet with them. Hear what they have to say. I looked at Rebecca, who shrugged helplessly, then back at my mother. Fine, I'll listen, but I'm not agreeing to anything. The relief on my mother's face was almost painful to see. She genuinely believed this was the right thing, the best thing for me. That was perhaps the worst part. My parents weren't evil. They were just so deeply entrenched in their world that they couldn't imagine any other way of living. We walked back into the house together, a united front that was anything but united. The Montgomerys were already in the living room, Dexter's parents, William and Patricia, looking like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren advertisement, and Dexter himself, checking his phone with the intensity of someone monitoring stock prices. He looked up when we entered, and his face transformed with a smile that I'm sure had charmed many women. Objectively, Dexter Montgomery was handsome. Tall, athletic build, strong jaw, eyes the color of sage honey. He was also boring as watching paint dry, with conversation topics that ranged from market volatility to golf handicaps. Margaret, he said, crossing the room to take my hand. You look lovely tonight. Thank you, I managed, extracting my hand as quickly as politeness allowed. Shall we all sit? My father suggested, gesturing toward the formal seating area. We have much to discuss. William Montgomery launched into a presentation, and I use that word deliberately because he actually had prepared slides on his tablet about the synergies between our companies. Market share, profit projections, international expansion opportunities. I felt like I was in a board meeting where I was both a participant and the primary asset being leveraged. The wedding would be the social event of the year, Patricia Montgomery added, her voice dripping with excitement. I've already spoken to the plaza. They can hold the date for us, the 15th of June. June? I interrupted. That's only 8 months away. Well, we don't see any reason to wait, William said. Strike while the iron is hot, as they say in business. Dexter leaned forward, his expression earnest. Margaret, I know this might seem sudden, but our families have known each other for years. We've practically grown up together. That was a gross exaggeration. We'd been at some of the same events. Sure. I vaguely remembered him at a few Christmas parties, perhaps a charity gala or two. But growing up together, we'd had maybe 5 conversations in our entire lives, and most of those had been about the weather or which college we were attending. Dexter, I began carefully, aware that all eyes were on me. I'm flattered by your interest, but she's overwhelmed, my mother interjected smoothly. It's a lot to take in. Perhaps Dexter and Margaret should spend some time alone, get to know each other better. Excellent idea, William Montgomery agreed, already standing. Why don't you two take a walk in the garden? We'll handle the boring business details here. I wanted to scream that my life was not a boring business detail, but Dexter was already offering me his arm, and my mother's eyes were blazing with warning. Fine. I'd play along for now, if only to buy myself time to think. The garden felt different with Dexter beside me, less like a sanctuary and more like a stage. He walked with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, never had to question whether he belonged somewhere. You don't want this either, I said once we were out of earshot of the house. He looked surprised. What makes you say that? Because no one who actually wants to marry someone lets their parents negotiate it like a business deal. Dexter was quiet for a moment, his hands in his pockets. You're right, I don't particularly want this, but I don't not want it either. That's the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. He laughed, and for the first time, seemed genuine. I'm not a romantic person, Margaret. I'm practical. Our families fit. Our businesses fit. We'd have beautiful children with trust funds and summer houses. It would be Efficient. Efficient, I repeated, incredulous. You want an efficient marriage? Don't you? He seemed genuinely puzzled. Love is messy, unpredictable. It makes people do irrational things. Look at my cousin Sarah. She married for love. Some artist from Seattle. They divorced within 2 years, and the prenup battle was a nightmare. So you'd rather have a loveless marriage than risk a divorce? I'd rather have a stable partnership based on mutual benefit than a passionate disaster based on fleeting emotions. I thought of Logan then, of the way he looked at me like I was his whole world, of the Sunday mornings we spent tangled in sheets, reading the news on our phones and debating whether pancakes or waffles were superior. There was nothing efficient about our love. Nothing practical about the way my heart raced when he walked into a room. I'm in love with someone else, I told Dexter plainly. He nodded as if I'd told him I preferred tea to coffee. That's fine. You can keep seeing him if you're discreet about it. I stopped walking, staring at him in disbelief. You're suggesting I marry you and have an affair? I'm suggesting we both understand what this is and make the best of it. I have someone too, a woman in London. We've been together for 3 years. She understands the situation. The casual cruelty of it, the complete emotional detachment, made me feel sick. This is insane. This is business, Margaret. Your parents need this merger. My parents want the Harrison political connections. We both get what we need, and we can live our own lives within reason. Within reason, I repeated, my voice hollow. Think about it, Dexter said, checking his watch. I have a conference call with Tokyo in an hour, so I should go. But Margaret? He turned back to face me. Your father's company isn't doing as well as he pretends. This merger might be more necessary than you think. He left me standing there in the garden, my mind reeling from his casual revelation about my father's business. Not doing well? Harrison Industries had been a fixture of the New York business scene for 70 years. We had contracts with major corporations, government deals, a diverse portfolio that my father had always assured us was recession-proof. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled my own family's company. The first few results were standard: our corporate website, some press releases about new contracts. But then I found it buried on the third page of results. A small item in a trade publication from 2 months ago about Harrison Industries losing a major defense contract to a competitor. Then another article about layoffs in our Chicago office. And another about a failed expansion into Asian markets that had cost millions. My phone rang. Logan. Hey, I answered, my voice shaky. Can you come get me? What's wrong? What happened? Everything's falling apart. Can you just come? I'm at my parents' house. I'm on my way. I walked back toward the house, my mind made up. I found them all in the living room. Contracts spread across the coffee table. My father and William Montgomery deep in discussion about equity splits and board positions. I need to speak with my parents, I announced. Alone. The Montgomerys exchanged glances, but stood to leave. Dexter gave me a meaningful look as he passed, a reminder of what he'd told me in the garden. When they were gone, I faced my parents. Is it true? Is the company in trouble? My father's face darkened. Who told you that? It doesn't matter, is it true? It's a temporary setback, he said stiffly. Nothing we can't handle. With the Montgomery merger, I finished for him. That's why you're so desperate for this to happen. You need their money. We need their infrastructure, my mother corrected. Their international connections. It's not about money. It's always about money, Rebecca said from the doorway. She'd been listening, of course. I heard you and Dad arguing about it last month. The house in the Hamptons, the yacht. You're selling everything, aren't you? My parents exchanged a look that confirmed everything. How bad is it, I asked. My father sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. We have 6 months, maybe 8 if we liquidate more assets. But if the merger happens, we're saved. More than saved, we'll be stronger than ever. So you're selling me to save the company. We're not selling you. My mother's voice was sharp. We're offering you an opportunity. Do you think love marriages last forever? Look at the divorce rate, Margaret. At least this way, you know what you're getting into. I know exactly what I'm getting into, I said. A lifetime of misery. A car honked outside. Logan. My night in a beat-up Honda Civic. I'm leaving, I announced. If you walk out that door with him, my father said, his voice deadly quiet. You're cut off. No trust fund, no inheritance, nothing. You'll be on your own. I looked at him, this man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at every school play, who'd once told me I could be anything I wanted to be. I guess I'm on my own then. My mother stood, tears in her eyes. Margaret, please, think about what you're doing. Think about your future. I am thinking about my future, I said, grabbing my purse. For the first time in my life, I'm actually thinking about my future, not yours. I walked out of my childhood home with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back, my parents' shouts fading behind me as I climbed into Logan's car. He didn't say anything at first, just drove while I sat there shaking, the adrenaline of what I'd just done hitting me in waves. Pull over, I managed to say when we were a few blocks away. He pulled into a CVS parking lot, and I barely made it out of the car before I was sick, my body purging the stress and fear and anger of the evening. Logan held my hair back, rubbing circles on my back, murmuring soothing words that I couldn't quite make out over the roaring in my ears. When I was done, he handed me a bottle of water from his car and a pack of gum. Better? I just gave up everything, I said, the reality of it hitting me. My family, my trust fund, my whole life. You didn't give up everything, he said quietly. You chose something. There's a difference. We sat in that parking lot for an hour while I told him everything. The arranged marriage, Dexter's casual suggestion of affairs, my father's failing business, the ultimatum. Logan listened without interrupting, his hand holding mine across the center console. I can't ask you to take this on, I said when I was finished. My family will make our lives hell. They'll probably try to destroy you professionally, personally. Margaret, he interrupted. Stop. I knew who your family was when we started dating. I knew this day might come. You couldn't have known it would be this bad. No, he admitted. But I knew loving you meant potentially going up against the Harrison Empire. And I decided you were worth it. What if I'm not? What if you wake up one day and realize you gave up a normal, drama-free life for me? He turned to face me fully. Then I'll remind myself that normal is overrated and you do this thing with your nose when you laugh that makes my entire day better. Despite everything, I laughed, and he pointed at my nose. There it is. We drove to his apartment in Brooklyn, a third-floor walk-up that was roughly the size of my parents' coat closet. But it was warm and lived in, with mismatched furniture he'd found at estate sales and walls covered in concert posters and photographs he'd taken on trips upstate. We need a plan, I said, collapsing onto his couch. We need wine first, he corrected, pulling a bottle from his kitchen cabinet. Then a plan. As he poured, my phone exploded with messages. My mother, my father, Rebecca, even some of their society friends who'd already heard the news. The New York elite gossip network was faster than the internet. One message stood out, from a number I didn't recognize. This is Dexter. I respect your decision. If you change your mind, the offer stands. Good luck. I showed it to Logan, who read it and shrugged. At least he's not a complete asshole. He told his girlfriend in London about the arrangement. She's fine with it. Logan nearly choked on his wine. There's a girlfriend? Apparently. He suggested I could keep seeing you after we got married, as long as I was discreet. How very French of him. How very sociopathic of him. We stayed up until 3 a.m, planning our next moves. I had some money saved from my marketing job, enough for a few months if we were careful. Logan's salary could cover his rent and basic expenses. We could make it work, we decided, if we were smart about it. There's one more thing, Logan said as we were getting ready for bed. He disappeared into his closet and came back with a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Logan, I bought this 2 months ago, he said, opening it to reveal a simple silver band with a tiny sapphire. I was going to wait until your birthday, do it properly. But I think maybe properly is overrated too. He got down on one knee right there in his tiny bedroom, wearing sweatpants and an old Nirvana t-shirt. Margaret Elizabeth Harrison, you just gave up a fortune for me. The least I can do is offer you my last name. Will you marry me? I said yes through tears, and he slipped the ring onto my finger. It was nothing like the 3-carat diamond I'm sure Dexter would have presented, but it was perfect because it was real, because it was chosen with love, not obligation. When? I asked. How about tomorrow? Tomorrow? Why wait? Unless you want the big wedding. No, I said quickly. No big wedding. But tomorrow? Can we even do that? City Hall. We get the license in the morning, get married in the afternoon. My friend Jake can be our witness. The idea was insane, impulsive, everything my parents would hate. Let's do it. We barely slept, too wired on adrenaline and anticipation. At dawn, we were already getting ready, Logan in his only suit. Me in a simple white dress I'd left at his place weeks ago. It wasn't a wedding dress, just a sundress I'd worn to a garden party. But it would do. City Hall was crowded with couples, some in elaborate wedding outfits, others in jeans and t-shirts. We waited our turn, holding hands, giggling at the absurdity of it all. Jake showed up with a bouquet of bodega flowers and a disposable camera, insisting on documenting everything. The ceremony itself was brief, conducted by a city clerk who'd clearly done thousands of these. But when Logan said his vows, when he promised to love me in good times and bad, in sickness and health, in wealth and in poverty, that last bit hit differently. We were choosing poverty, at least by my family's standards, and we were choosing it together. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Logan kissed me there in that government building, surrounded by strangers, and I felt more at home than I ever had in my parents' mansion. We celebrated with pizza and champagne on Logan's roof, the Manhattan skyline glittering before us. Jake had invited a few of Logan's friends, people who'd become my friends too over the months, artists and programmers and bartenders, people who worked for a living and laughed easily and didn't care about trust funds or family names. To the new Mrs. Mitchell, Jake toasted, and I realized with a start that I was no longer Margaret Harrison. I was Margaret Mitchell, like the author of Gone with the Wind. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone had been silent all day, and I'd assumed my parents had given up. But as the sun set, Rebecca called. Where are you? She sounded panicked. I'm safe, I'm with Logan. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. They've called everyone. The Montgomerys, their lawyers, even hired a private investigator to find you. Let them. Maggie, it's worse than you think. Dad. He had some kind of episode. His blood pressure spiked. He's in the hospital. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. Is he okay? He's stable. But Mom is using it to tell everyone you gave him a heart attack. The story is already spreading. You're being painted as the ungrateful daughter who chose some nobody over her family and nearly killed her father in the process. I looked at Logan, who could hear Rebecca's voice through the phone. He nodded. Understanding. We got married, I told my sister. Today, at City Hall. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, you what? We got married. I'm Margaret Mitchell now. You're insane, Rebecca breathed. Completely insane. Do you have any idea what you've done? I married the man I love. You've started a war. Mom's already talking about having it annulled, claiming you were coerced or mentally unstable. She can try, I said, though the thought sent a chill through me. My parents had resources, lawyers, connections. If they wanted to make our lives difficult, they could. I have to go, Rebecca said. They can't know I called you. But Maggie, be careful. They're not going to let this go. She was right. The next morning, Logan and I woke to find a process server at his door. My parents were seeking an emergency injunction, claiming I'd been manipulated into marriage while in emotional distress. The papers also included a cease and desist order against Logan, warning him to stay away from me. They can't do this, I said, reading through the legal documents. We're both adults. The marriage is legal. They can try, Logan said grimly. And they can make our lives hell in the process. We needed a lawyer, but lawyers cost money we didn't have. I started making calls to legal aid societies, but my family name preceded me. The Harrison family had connections everywhere, and no one wanted to go up against them. Then an unexpected ally emerged. Sarah Chen, Dexter's cousin, the one who'd married for love and gone through the nasty divorce. She called me out of the blue. I heard what happened, she said. I want to help. Why? Because I've been where you are. Because I know what it's like to have your family turn on you for choosing love. And because I have a very good lawyer who owes me a favor. Her lawyer, Marcus Williams, was a bulldog who'd made his career taking on New York's elite in high-profile divorces. He reviewed our case pro bono and laughed. They don't have a leg to stand on, he said. You're both consenting adults, the marriage is legal, and their claims of coercion are baseless. But they're going to throw everything at you to wear you down. He was right. Over the next week, my parents' campaign intensified. They froze my bank accounts, claiming the money in them came from family trusts. They contacted my employer, suggesting I was having a mental health crisis. They even reached out to Logan's company, implying he'd committed some kind of fraud. Logan's boss called him in, concerned. I don't care about your personal life, he said, but I can't have the company dragged into this. They're trying to intimidate you, Logan said, and it's working. I'm sorry, Logan, but until this blows over, I think it's best if you take a leave of absence. Just like that, our only source of income was gone. We sat in his apartment that night, the reality of our situation sinking in. No money, no jobs, and my family's full weight bearing down on us. We could leave, Logan suggested. Just pack up and go somewhere they can't reach us. And live on what? We have maybe $2,000 between us. We'll figure it out. People start over all the time. I wanted to be brave, to be the kind of person who could just run away and start fresh. But I was also angry. Why should we have to run? Why should my parents get to destroy our lives because we didn't follow their plan? No, I said, we're not running. We're going to fight. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to the press. If my parents wanted to make this public, then I'd tell my side of the story. I reached out to a journalist who'd covered my family before, someone who'd always been fair but thorough. You want to go on record? She asked, surprised. About everything? Everything. The article came out 3 days later. Harrison heiress chooses love over fortune. Inside the arranged marriage scandal. It detailed everything: the attempted arranged marriage, my father's failing business, the threats and legal harassment. It even included a photo of Logan and me at City Hall, looking deliriously happy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My parents' society friends were scandalized. The business community was buzzing with speculation about Harrison Industries' financial troubles. And unexpectedly, I started receiving messages of support from other women who'd faced similar pressure from their families. My parents' response was swift. They released their own statement, painting me as unstable and Logan as a gold digger who'd targeted me for my family money. They even suggested our marriage was invalid because I'd been unduly influenced. But then something unexpected happened. William Montgomery called me directly. This has gotten out of hand, he said. The publicity is bad for everyone involved. Then maybe you should tell my parents to back off. I have a better idea. What if we all sat down and talked, like adults? There's nothing to talk about. I'm married. I'm not getting unmarried to make a business deal happen. I understand that. But perhaps there's another way. A different kind of arrangement that could benefit everyone. I was suspicious, but curious. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a private room at a downtown restaurant. My parents were already there when Logan and I arrived, my mother's face a mask of cold fury, my father looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. William Montgomery played mediator. Here's what I propose, he said. The marriage between Dexter and Margaret is off the table. That's clear. But the business merger could still happen, with different terms. What kind of terms? My father asked. Margaret comes back to Harrison Industries. Not as a bargaining chip, but as an executive. She helps facilitate the merger from the inside. In exchange, you recognize her marriage and stop the legal harassment. Absolutely not, my mother said. Victoria, William said patiently, your daughter has already proven she won't be controlled. You can either have her as an ally or an enemy. Which would you prefer? And what about him? My father pointed at Logan like he was something unpleasant on his shoe. Logan is her husband, William said firmly. That's non-negotiable, but perhaps he could be an asset too. I understand he's a talented programmer. Montgomery Tech could use someone with his skills. Logan and I exchanged glances. This was unexpected. You're offering us both jobs? I asked. I'm offering a way forward that doesn't destroy both families, William said. Dexter never wanted this marriage anyway. He's already back in London with his girlfriend. But the merger makes sense, and if we can make it happen without the drama, everyone wins. My parents were silent, clearly struggling with the proposal. Finally, my father spoke. If we agree to this, there are conditions. Such as? They sign a prenup. Post-nuptial, I suppose. If the marriage fails, she gets nothing from the family trust. We don't want your money, I said. Then signing should be no problem. It took 3 more hours of negotiation, but finally, we had an agreement. I would return to Harrison Industries as Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. Logan would join Montgomery Tech as a senior developer. My marriage would be recognized, and all legal action would be dropped. In exchange, I would help facilitate the merger and sign away any claim to the family fortune if Logan and I divorced. As we left the restaurant, my mother pulled me aside. You think you've won, she said quietly, but you've just made your life infinitely harder. Love fades, Margaret. And when it does, you'll have nothing to fall back on. Then I guess I better make sure it doesn't fade, I replied. That was 6 months ago. The merger went through successfully, creating Harrison Montgomery Enterprises, one of the largest tech conglomerates on the East Coast. I threw myself into the work, proving I was more than just the boss's daughter. Logan thrived at Montgomery Tech, his innovative approaches to coding earning him rapid promotions. My relationship with my parents remained strained but functional. We had monthly dinners that were exercises in polite conversation and careful boundaries. My father never apologized for trying to arrange my marriage, but he did acknowledge, grudgingly, that Logan was not entirely incompetent. Rebecca graduated from college and surprised everyone by announcing she was going to medical school, stepping away from the family business entirely. I've seen what it does to people, she told me. I want to help people, not merge with them. The real test came at Thanksgiving. My parents hosted, as always, and for the first time, Logan was invited as my husband rather than hidden away like a guilty secret. The dining room was full. My parents, Rebecca, some cousins, my Aunt Catherine who'd flown in from Boston, and us. Logan wore his best suit and brought an expensive bottle of wine I knew he couldn't really afford, even with his new salary. So, Logan, my Aunt Catherine said halfway through dinner, her voice carrying that particular tone of false interest. Tell us about your family. Will they be joining us for the holidays? Logan set down his fork carefully. My mother passed away when I was 16. My father and I aren't close. An awkward silence fell over the table. I reached for his hand under the tablecloth. I'm sorry for your loss, Catherine said, though she didn't sound particularly sorry. It must be quite an adjustment, joining a family like ours. It is, Logan agreed. You have traditions going back generations. In my apartment growing up, Thanksgiving was usually Chinese takeout and watching football with my mom, but there's something to be said for both approaches. Chinese takeout for Thanksgiving? My mother's horror was barely concealed. Some of my best memories, Logan said simply. My mom worked 2 jobs. Thanksgiving was one of the few days we had together, just the 2 of us. The food didn't matter. I saw something shift in my father's expression then, not quite approval, but perhaps a grudging respect. He'd built his empire from the ground up, after all. He understood work, sacrifice, even if he'd forgotten what it meant to choose love over profit. Family is what matters, Rebecca said, raising her glass. However you define it. The rest of dinner passed without major incident, though I caught my mother watching Logan and me, her expression unreadable. After dessert, as everyone migrated to the living room for coffee and cognac, she pulled me aside once more. He loves you, she said, and it wasn't a question. Yes. And you love him more than anything. She was quiet for a moment, looking toward the living room where Logan was actually making my father laugh at something, a minor miracle in itself. I wanted security for you, she said finally, the kind that comes with contracts and bank accounts and family names. But maybe, she paused, seeming to struggle with the words, maybe there's another kind of security, the kind that comes from someone who chooses you even when it costs them everything. It was the closest to an apology I'd ever get from Victoria Harrison. Mom, I started, but she held up a hand. I'm not saying I was wrong. I'm saying, perhaps there's more than one way to be right. Later that night, as Logan and I lay in our new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in Queens we'd just qualified for with our combined salaries, he told me about the conversation he'd had with my father. He offered me a promotion, Logan said, direct report to him, overseeing the entire digital transformation project. That's amazing. Why don't you sound happy about it? Because it comes with a condition. We have to agree to have children within 2 years. He wants heirs to the empire. I sat up, anger flooding through me. He's still trying to control us. That's what I told him. I turned it down. You turned down a promotion? I turned down a manipulation disguised as a promotion. There's a difference. I kissed him then. This man who'd walked away from guaranteed success because he wouldn't let anyone, not even my father, dictate our future. We'll have kids when we're ready, I said. If we're ready, and if we don't, then we don't. Our life, our choice. The next few months were a whirlwind of work and adjustment. The merger integration was complex, requiring long hours and delicate negotiations. But I was good at it, finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Logan's work at Montgomery Tech was earning recognition too. He'd developed a new security protocol that could save the company millions. Then, just as things were settling into a rhythm, Dexter came back from London. He walked into my office on a random Tuesday, looking tanned and relaxed. "Heard you made the merger work," he said, sitting down uninvited. "Impressive. What do you want, Dexter?" "To apologize, actually. The whole arranged marriage thing, it was archaic. Insulting to both of us. Your parents didn't seem to think so. My parents are from a different era. They still think marriages are about land preservation and bloodlines." He paused. "I broke up with the woman in London. I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It wasn't real. It was just convenient. Seeing you and Logan, the way you fought for each other, it made me realize I was settling for convenient." It was probably the most human thing I'd ever heard Dexter say. "So what now?" I asked. "Now I actually try to find someone I'd fight for. Someone who'd fight for me." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Your father's company is stronger than it's been in years, you know. The merger saved it, but your leadership is what's making it thrive." After he left, I sat there thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. The girl who'd stood in her parents' dining room, champagne shattered at her feet, felt like a different person. That girl had been terrified of losing her family's approval, their money, their protection. This woman, Mrs. Margaret Mitchell, had learned that the only approval that mattered was her own. That evening, Logan and I met for dinner at a small Italian place near our apartment. It wasn't the kind of restaurant my parents would ever set foot in. Plastic tablecloths, wine served in water glasses, a menu that hadn't changed since 1987. But the pasta was perfect, and the owner, Tony, knew our names and always gave us free tiramisu. "I've been thinking," Logan said over our entrees. "We should write it all down. Everything that happened." "Why?" "So we remember. So when things get comfortable, when we maybe start taking each other for granted, we can look back and remember what we fought for." "Things won't get comfortable," I protested. "Not with my family, maybe not. But just in case." So we started writing it all down, taking turns adding to the story. The arranged marriage attempt, the ultimatum, our city hall wedding, the legal battles, the merger, the slow, careful reconstruction of family relationships. Reading it now, I realize it sounds like a fairy tale in reverse. Instead of the poor girl marrying the prince and living happily ever after in a castle, the rich girl chose the poor boy and lived happily ever after in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. But that's not quite right either, because Logan's not poor, he just measures wealth differently than my parents do. He's rich in integrity, in kindness, in the kind of love that doesn't require contracts or conditions. And me? I'm not the rich girl anymore. At least not in the way I used to be. My trust fund is gone, my inheritance signed away. But I wake up every morning next to someone who chose me. Not my name, not my connections, not my family's company, just me. My parents still hope I'll come to my senses, as my mother delicately puts it. They're waiting for the passion to fade, for reality to set in, for me to realize what I've given up. But what they don't understand is that I didn't give up anything that mattered. I traded a cage made of gold for a life made of choices. Last week, I found out I'm pregnant. Logan and I hadn't planned it. We'd said we'd wait until we were more financially stable, until things with my family were better resolved. But life doesn't wait for perfect timing. When I told Logan, he got tears in his eyes. "Our child won't have a trust fund," he said. "No," I agreed. "They'll have something better." "What's that?" "Parents who chose each other. Parents will teach them that love isn't a business transaction and marriage isn't a merger." We haven't told my parents yet. We're waiting for the right moment, though I suspect there's no such thing. They'll either see it as a capitulation to their demands for an heir, or as another act of rebellion because we didn't wait for their approval. But that's the thing about choosing your own path. You stop waiting for approval and start living your life. Tomorrow is our first wedding anniversary. Logan's been secretive about his plans, but I saw him hide something in his closet last week, and he's been grinning like an idiot every time he looks at me. I've been planning too. I bought the deed to a small piece of land upstate, just an acre with a stream running through it. It's nothing compared to my family's estates, but it's ours. A place where we can build something from scratch, without the weight of anyone else's expectations. The Harrison name still opens doors for me professionally, and I won't lie, that's been useful. But at home, I'm Margaret Mitchell, and that name is starting to mean something too. It means the woman who chose love over money, the woman who stood up to her family, the woman who proved that sometimes the best rebellion is simply choosing to be happy. Rebecca called yesterday. "Mom wants to know if you're coming to the Christmas gala. Are spouses invited?" She said, and I quote, "I suppose Logan can come if he owns a proper tuxedo. Tell her he owns a proper tuxedo, and tell her we'll be there." "Really?" "Really. But we're leaving early. We have our own traditions to build. And we do Chinese takeout on Thanksgiving, just like Logan's mother used to do. Sunday morning farmers markets where we buy flowers for no reason. Tuesday night trivia at the bar down the street where we lose spectacularly but laugh until our sides hurt. These aren't the traditions I grew up with. There's no silver service or seating charts or negotiated alliances. But there's love, real and messy and inconvenient and absolutely worth everything I gave up to have it. My mother was wrong about one thing. Love doesn't fade if you tend to it. It grows, adapts, surprises you. It survives family feuds and financial struggles and all the mundane disasters of daily life. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when Logan brings me coffee in bed, or random afternoons when he sends me silly memes while I'm in board meetings, or late nights when we slow dance in our tiny kitchen to whatever's playing on his phone, I think about the girl I used to be, the one who almost married Dexter Montgomery for a business deal. I feel sorry for her. She would have had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. Instead, I have Logan's hand in mine as we navigate the subway. I have inside jokes and shared dreams and the kind of partnership my parents' contracts could never have guaranteed. I have a child growing inside me who will know they were wanted, chosen, loved from the very beginning. The Harrisons might have cut me off, but the Mitchells took me in. And honestly, it was the best trade I ever made.